and then it's probably going to the bonus point system.
The price increase is probably the one that should scare guys as far as if they don't want to spend that much money on a special, because what's going to happen is the regular is going to get definitely harder to draw.
This hunting, especially out of state, it's just a big investment anymore.
Welcome to the Built to Hunt podcast, brought to you by the team of hunt advisors at the Huntin Fool magazine, where we are dedicated to helping our members go on more hunts with better information. Join Huntin Fool today at huntinfool.com.
This segment of the podcast is brought to you by onX Hunt. This is Austin from Huntin Fool, and I would not go into the field without my onX Hunt app queued up with offline maps and ready to go. Every time I'm hunting in Alaska and I'm going through a sketchy part of brush or really thick terrain, I'll always turn on my tracking in my Hunt app. That's going to allow me to lay a nice GPS track that I can easily follow to return back to my starting point. Whether it's daylight or dark, I know where I've been. I use my phone now as my GPS in the field. Having 3D maps accessible on my phone, a satellite view, a hybrid view, or a terrain topo view, it's got everything you need to set those waypoints, watch your tracks, and return back to your starting point. Don't get lost, know where you're at, and make all sorts of waypoints, notes, photos, and everything along the way. Download the onX Hunt app today on your phone. Use code HUNTINFOOL to receive 20% off your first membership for premium or elite. Go to onxmaps.com/hunt and get started today.
Welcome to another Built to Hunt podcast. Garth Jensen here. I'm joined by Logan Hedges, who's working out of remote Smoot, Wyoming. And that's what we're going to talk about today is not his home in Smoot, but potential changes and changes that are happening in Wyoming this year. There's a lot of moving parts right now in Wyoming, and just kind of sorting through some of the myths and some of these places you talk and you hear people talk, and it can go a little bit wild. Some of it's accurate, some of it's not so accurate. So we're gonna tell you exactly what's going on right now. I know Logan pays close attention to the commission meetings, the task force meetings, things like that, and keeps up on all of those. And we're just going to kind of go through and inform everybody about what's happening this year, what could happen in the future, what they're talking about, some potential changes that could be on the way.
Yeah, you bet. There's a lot of stuff going on in Wyoming right now, and I guess the best place to start is about 18 months ago when they started that Wyoming Wildlife Task Force, and you know, those guys are just about done with all their meetings, and they've thrown and talked about a lot of stuff, some good, some not so good, but yeah, there's, you know, the biggest thing that has come out already that's been passed, and probably most people know about it, is that the 90-10 split for the big five, which, you know, was bighorn sheep, moose, mountain goat, bison, and they threw grizzly on there if the state ever gets a hold of it. So
one day.
Don't hold your breath, but we'll see what happens. They have them there just in case. So yeah, and you know, a lot of states have a 90-10 split. Wyoming was always really good about giving non-residents tags for those big five or the big four anyways, and boy, those days are gone now. It's a big change, as we've talked about quite a bit, Garth. So
and the biggest thing is a lot of these other states have 90-10 splits. But when they went to that 90-10 split, the one issue that I had with it, and this is the issue that's rearing its head this year, is the way they conduct their draw based on the 75% of the permits go to max point or top point applicants, and 25% go to those that in the random draw. You have to have at least 4 permits for one of those in order for one of them to be issued to a random. Whereas most of the other states, they'll err on the side of that random tag. You know, so if there's not enough tags in there, and I'm talking for the most part for your bighorn sheep, moose, mountain goat, things like that. So even in Colorado, where it's a true preference point system, they have a weighted point system for their trophy species. So at least for now, there might not be any random tags for, say, at least your bighorn sheep and your moose that are, that do have points associated with it. Obviously, mountain goat and bison don't have points.
Yeah.
But those two, why don't you explain and elaborate a little bit on some of what's coming down the pipe and some of the discussions you've had with like the internal department on how they're going to handle that?
Yeah, so basically, just to throw numbers at it, in 2022, there was 45 non-resident sheep tags given, bighorn sheep tags given in Wyoming. In 2023, there's probably going to be right around 18 given.
For non-residents.
For non-residents, yeah. So that's a big. Well, it's basically 60% decrease in tags for non-residents. So with those numbers, I just can't. That doesn't show that there's going to be any random tags. They're going to have to get real creative if they're going to make a random tag for a non-resident.
So that's basically because it's per hunt, not as a total like they do in Arizona. So Arizona is a total accumulative number of sheep tags, where Wyoming, it's per hunt.
Yep.
So those 18 tags are going to be spread out through multiple hunts.
Yeah. They're probably going to be spread out to 10 or 11 units. So if that's the case, it's very unlikely there'll be a random tag. We'll know more. They did one thing that they did do that'll help out a little bit is they moved that deadline, the application deadline, back for those four until April 17th. Which will be nice, which is after the commission season setting meeting, which is the second week of April. So we'll know, and hopefully we'll even know pretty close before that what's going to be proposed at that meeting. But they will sign off on everything at that meeting the second week of April, and then the deadline's the 17th, that following Monday.
So that season setting meeting is going to include tag allocation.
Yeah, that always includes the tag allocations, what they're going to give for basically all species other than some of their predators.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. So that's an important deadline to remember, because it was always earlier than that in February when you had to apply, and once it was brought to their attention that, hey, people might be drawing dead, like they might be applying for areas that don't even have a non-resident tag. You guys have got to get this figured out before non-residents can even apply for these units. And so they moved that season date back this year just specifically for that issue.
Yeah, that was the biggest concern and that we all had. And so they did the right thing to move it back. We'll just have to see how it plays out. There's lots of talk about this unit's going to get a tag and that unit's going to get a tag. But as of right now, we don't know for sure.
Yeah. And primarily that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's 2023 and 2024. Now, 2025 is a different issue. Now, has that been finalized through the legislation as far as changing the way they issue these big 5 tags based off of your points from a preference to a weighted system?
No, not yet, but it's been proposed. A lot of discussion on it. And, from the talk, it's probably going to happen around 2025. So basically, they wanted to give the top point holders a couple of years to burn their points if they wanted to. Because this is kind of how, like, a lot of these guys have been applying for years. They kind of got the rug jerked out from underneath them a little bit. This 90-10 split happened pretty fast without a lot of talk when it happened. And there just wasn't a lot of time once they proposed it to when they kind of got it passed. So they wanted to give everybody that had the top points a couple of years. If you want to burn them, burn them. They may not get to burn them in the unit that they've been wanting, but they will have a chance to draw a tag. They're just, and then it's probably going to the bonus point system. And which is probably the best and fairest way to do it, but it's still a little discouraging because you're still, if you don't have quite a few points, it's going to be tough to draw.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, we've seen what weighted point systems do and bonus point systems do in other states. When you look at Montana, Nevada, Colorado, where basically they don't have a preference draw for their trophy species or any of their species for, Nevada and Montana. Well, I guess not Montana, but Nevada for sure. Even if you're top point holder, it's still you against the field at that point. Yep. And so it kind of renders those points a little useless in the fact that the field is so vast and there's so many applications and there's so many added chances because of those applicants' bonus points they have going into it, that what you see is like applicants drawing all across the board, like from top point holder to a 1 point holder. It just seems like you have that, and I don't know, this is another interesting thing that's, we'll have to wait and see, which is speculation. But if they come out and we see what those tag numbers are and there's no random tags, if you don't have 22, 23 points, there's no reason for you to even throw in. You're just wasting money.
Nope. I mean, you got no chance of drawing. So you just I hate to tell somebody not to buy points or whatever, but you ought to think about it. If you want to stay in the game and you're young enough and feel you're lucky, get into the weighted system, have at it. But it's going to get expensive in the long run. And these are all factors that we've talked about. And I don't know, a lot of times it seems to fall on deaf ears. But at the same time, you look at it and there's only so much resource out there. So I wish we could all draw a sheep tag every 5 to 10 years, but it's just not the way it is.
Well, if we could all draw sheep tags every 5 to 10 years, then mule deer would probably be taking another 25 years, and everyone would want a mule deer instead of a sheep.
Yeah, amen. Yeah.
That's just the way it is. If it's hard to get, everybody wants it.
Yeah, yep, for sure. So, yeah, but I mean, those are some of the changes that have happened. And then that proposal, I mean, and we'll know more before too long. After the first year, they'll be having a lot of meetings, and they're kind of getting to the point where they're going to have to decide some things. So,
yeah,
the legislative session is going to get rolling here after the first year, and so when they'll get some things figured out, good or bad. But people, probably the most important thing I can tell everybody is kind of pay attention to it. If you're interested in this, go comment on some of these topics. And a topic that they have right now that non-residents should be interested in is on the Wyoming Game and Fish website, is they're talking about lifting the non-resident elk cap. And they've had a cap on there for a long time and it's 7,250 elk tags that they can issue in a calendar year to non-residents. And that number is really outdated. It's been there a long time. I can't remember exactly when they put it in, but it was a long time ago. And there's a lot more elk now in the state of Wyoming, and that cap needs to be changed. It's, in my opinion, they should just do away with it. They already have, an 84-16 split. They ought to just go with that 16% for non-residents and run with it throughout the state, in my opinion. So,
and I think where it becomes difficult, realistically, is where you have that difference between residents just buying the tag down at a licensed vendor and non-residents having to put in for the draw for that general tag. So it's hard to say this is your 10% split unless you actually went on the license sales from the year prior for a general elk license and just said this is the 10% quota that we can issue. But it gets a little tricky, especially if like this is speculation, whatever day it is, but if they go into this regionalizing like they've talked about and running that general elk more off of regions like they do their deer, now all of a sudden you have to account, like how do you, like you have to start coming up with some numbers of what 10% looks like, or 16% looks like for that elk for that general region.
Yep.
So it's got to be modeled based off of population and overall hunters and things like that. But it does get a little bit tricky where you're operating on two different systems for a general tag. But that number that you've talked about, I think, and anyone, we'll leave the link for that where you can go and leave comments in the show notes. But what I encourage everyone to do is when you get to that page, read up on why these changes are happening, because you can see the conversations and the recommendations, and there's some slides in there that'll kind of tell you different things about when that happened, as far as the quota was put in place, why it's outdated and not warranted anymore. But read up on it before you take that, because it'll enlighten a lot of what the questions are on that survey. It'll tell you a lot about why those questions are in there.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a lot to it for, but the CAPS it's just outdated right now.
Yeah.
From when I was a kid in this state to now, I mean, elk numbers they're flourishing. There's a lot of elk now. So, we can't say the same thing for mule deer, but the elk are sure doing well. So
yeah,
and there should be more opportunity for everybody because of that. So, and I think there's going to be. I mean, there's some pushback as always from especially residents and that not wanting non-residents to have any more tags. But man, I think the state's okay with it, because non-residents they're paying a pretty penny for it, and probably going to be paying more from the sounds of it.
Well, I'll tell you what. If I can sacrifice my chance, which was just slimmer than any, like if I can sacrifice that chance for a sheep, mountain goat, bison, moose, for a larger pie or a larger piece of the pie, a chance to hunt elk there, I would gladly do that, because honestly, I can hunt elk there a lot more often than I could those big 4 species. And that's when you come into, okay, well, they cut the quota for the big 5 species to 90-10.
Yeah.
Then they've talked about changing the way that these other licenses are allocated. Hell, we've had everything floated out there. A lot of this stuff has got defeated on the task force level and chosen not to move forward with proposing that to legislation. Hell, some of it, they even had a bill last year try to go through there for this that got defeated at legislation.
Yeah.
So it's not like this stuff isn't happening, but it could always come down to where, there's a lot of people saying, well, how do we know they're not going to cut the quota for elk, for antelope, for deer?
Yep.
I mean, they're talking about it, but the fact is they haven't really got much steam behind doing that yet. Maybe shaving some of that quota off for antelope and deer, because I think they're pretty liberal on that. What are they, 25% or are they 35%? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But they're really liberal when it comes to issuing that for non-residents. So they might shave some for antelope and deer, but I just think they've got, unless they have an outfitter draw or something like that, there's no way they're going to get the outfitter board to sign off on it, because that's their livelihood with these non-resident hunters coming in. That's who they're taking.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, on the front, it's an 80-20 split for your deer and antelope. But there's a lot of other ways to get around it with the secondary draws and leftover tags and everything. So there's actually more that end up going to non-residents there, especially if non-residents will work the system. Used to be a lot more and stuff, but tags are just harder to get all the time. But yeah, I mean, there's always that talk, and people need to pay attention, especially non-residents, because there is a group of people that are pushing that here in the state. And some of them are legislatures and some of these groups, and we fought them tooth and nail on that 90-10, and it mainly got defeated because of the financials on it. It was going to be a huge hit to Wyoming Game and Fish, and when they were presented with that, they kind of had to look around and be like, man, this isn't going to work for us. So yeah.
Well, I even heard arguments from residents in some of those task force meetings that were, quite frankly, pretty good arguments. And their argument was, hey, listen, even if we go to 90-10, all the residents out there that think they're going to draw a 124 elk tag or a 130 deer tag or a 128 deer tag, tags like that they're like, oh man, if I just got a bigger piece of the pie, now my odds went from 2% to 20%.
Yep.
No, they went from like 2 to 3.
Yeah, it's
or 2 to 2.5.
Yeah, that's probably closer. We figured some stuff up when this all happened, just for fun, to run numbers, and I kind of like numbers anyways. I've got a boy that's just turned 16 years old, and on the bighorn sheep, he's going to draw a tag if everything holds to the numbers that they are today, allocation wise. He'll draw a bighorn sheep tag 2 years sooner than he would have, with it being the way it was set. So it's not a huge thing. Yeah, he's going to be 2 years younger and stuff, and who knows what's going to happen in there, but it's not as big as people think it is and stuff. So And the number one thing still is just the resource. There's just not enough. I mean, we could solve a lot of problems if we could just get more animals on the landscape. That's simple, but that's hard to do. So, I'd love to go back to where the state of Wyoming used to issue 1,200 moose tags in a year. And I think last year, 2022 here, they issued 305. So that's a big factor there that we all kind of got to consider too. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's just like you say, all they're trying to do now is trying to figure out how to slice that pie up.
Yep.
And who gets what and what's fair and what's equal and how bad's it gonna hurt? Because quite frankly, like we were talking, if when they cut that from 90-10 for the big five species, that already up front cost them a ton of money. That's not even including applications if they lose applications on top of that or lose people that were purchasing points. So if they lose people that's going to be over and above what they're already losing for revenue that's going to come in. And at the end of the day, I hate to say it, but a lot of this stuff is about money. And they've got to figure out how to make that money.
You bet. Well, they went to getting $2,200 for some of those tags down to they're going to get $157 from a resident. So that's a pretty good pay cut right there. So and that's where a lot of these other things are coming into factor. This tag increase, the price increase for across the board, they're talking, for a lot of these species, and that's something that everybody should pay attention to. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of how high it's going to go. I mean, there's talk of 35, close to 40% increase, especially on the special draw for deer, elk, and antelope.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I've really seen. I don't think, from what I've seen, I haven't seen any finalized numbers of what the actual price is going to be. Only percentages that have been put out there, but nothing has passed legislation yet.
Yeah.
So that's got to go through. I mean, that's got to go through the process and finalized. And but man, I mean, you're looking at price increases of that nature. I have not seen anything that has depicted any type of increase to the regular license. Everything has always been to the special, and I think you're right. It's going to happen because they have to make that revenue.
Yeah, you bet. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of how high, and people need to comment and voice their opinions. Hopefully the regular draw stays where it's at. There's been talk on both, but mainly the push for the special, and the reasoning / excuse that they have for it is they want to try to get that gap bigger between the regular and special, kind of like it was originally intended for. And we can argue all day long why that is. I mean, we all have our own ideas, and some of us know, but we probably don't want to piss too many people off, so we'll kind of keep those opinions to ourselves. But it was there at one time to have a gap, where it was harder to draw that, where you could draw the special with a lot less points. So if you're willing to pay more,
Well, and Wyoming's on an island when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I think they're the only ones that have that type of breakdown in draw structure where you can pay more and get in a different draw. And it used to be, like you said, you paid more and you got in a draw that always had better odds because less people were willing to pay that price. But as time has moved on and, the dollar's been more inflated every day, damn near, it seems like.
Yep.
And that dollar isn't worth as much today as it was yesterday. It's easier for someone to spend that extra money if they think they're getting a better chance, and consequently, more and more people are looking at that saying, hey, that's not the most expensive part of my hunt. I'm going to go ahead and put in for this because it has better odds. Well, it did. Now sometimes it doesn't, just because more people are willing to do that, and I don't quite – it just depends because so many people have the information of draw odds. They can scroll down and be like, oh, man, that was 2 points better in the regular last year than the special. Well, then everyone jumps to the regular, and then the special gets better to draw, and then it goes back. And it's just a constant back-and-forth game that people are playing because they have the information now. And there's actually more tags in the regular draw than the special draw, so it doesn't take as many applicants in the special to jack that point at least that point creep up to the point where it surpasses the regular.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's, it goes back and forth, and it becomes a guessing game. You're just guessing. You're almost having to go the opposite of what it was last year. Is how it's kind of fluctuated here. So especially on these hard to draw units. But no, it's, the tag increase. If they increase it like they're talking, up to nearly $2,000 for a special elk tag, is the talk right now. The proposals that are out there. I mean, that's going to be almost a $1,300 gap. And that's going to make a difference. I know it's going to with guy. I wouldn't pay that, so I couldn't justify it. I mean, that's a lot of food and shoes and stuff for my kids.
Well, at that point, like, you're getting to the stage where, hey, I could hopefully track down a decent landowner tag in Colorado for elk.
Yep.
That would put me in a position where, man, I could be hunting a limited quota area. I think you can still pick up elk tags over there for a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
And you're in a better situation than a general elk tag.
Yeah.
Now I still think it's not going to be a big split when it comes to those areas where people have been applying for 15 to 17 years. They just want to go. They're probably going to hire an outfitter, and I guarantee that outfitter is going to charge them more than $2,000 to take them.
Well, they got so much invested now, time and money, that what's another, few $100, $1,000. It's at that point, it doesn't really matter. All their chips are on the table anyway. So, yeah.
Well, we might see a second choice. I mean, if that gets to around $2,000, we might see second choice general elk tags handed out one more time.
Yeah, it might. I'll be surprised, but it could happen. So
that's a lot of money for an elk tag.
You bet it is, and you're just getting started. So you haven't got here yet.
Yeah. Try coming from Wisconsin, driving across there, especially with fuel prices. So there's so many things that are taking place right now in Wyoming that it's hard to keep your thumb on one or the other, just because they're ever changing. They get drafted in the task force, and they look at that and they say, okay, here's what we're recommending to go through legislation, and here's what we're recommending the governor to look at. And once it gets passed up that chain, then they hash it out. Sometimes it gets spitballed back, and they get ideas from them again. And by the time it passes legislation or gets brought up, it might go and it might not.
Yeah. Yep. And they're all different. Some of them, the commission, the actual Game and Fish Commission, can pass. Others have to go to the legislature and stuff. So it's kind of it's hard keeping track of all this stuff. Well, can you guys pass it, at the commission meetings? No. They've got their lawyer there. It's always like, no, this has got to go be passed by the state legislature and signed by the governor. And so it's always back and forth. You brought up the general elk tags, and we touched base on it a little bit, but that's another big one. They're going to regionize those general elk areas for non-residents, and that's going to happen. It's coming. It's just a matter of if they can get it done in 2024, 2025. And my guess is it'll be done in 2024 because
what's that?
Because they want to do that. They want to get it done. So the proposed map is out there right now. They're proposing 11 regions for it. Yep. We tried and we said, just keep it simple. Just do it the same as the deer. Wyoming does not like to have consistent maps. So
they prove that when you start branching across species.
Yeah.
They do not like having the same number. I mean, it's like it's crime when they do it.
It is. It absolutely is. And this is just going to make everything more confusing. If you want to get on their website and look at that proposed regionized map, it's when I first saw it, I looked at it and I had to take a triple take. I'm like, and I've lived here my whole life, and I still can't figure out why they broke it up the way they did in some of those places. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But that'll be discussed a lot still.
That map is going to be, like when I mentioned earlier that we'll leave the link in the show notes to get on there and take that survey. So if you read that information that they have on the proposed changes and the stuff that you're taking the survey on, that map is included in there, at least a draft. It's not a finalized map by any stretch, but that is the current draft of what they have for that map regionalizing the elk.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, those are the main ones they're talking about now. There's some other discussion of things down the road, but, you know, these are kind of the main topics that are out there and being pushed pretty hard right now for changes, you know.
Yeah. So, like, back to your point, the biggest thing you can do is pay attention, you know, to what's going on in Wyoming, especially if you have points and you're invested in it. Or, like, if you're just a new hunter and you're looking at it and you're like, well, is it worth my time to actually invest money into this state to try and, like, potentially hunt it down the road? Like, what are my odds? What are they looking like? Is there going to be a quota change? Is there a quota change?
Yeah.
Some of these have taken place. Some of them haven't, but they're being floated around. So, yeah, like, stay aware.
Yeah.
Like, get in there, comment, take these surveys they're putting out. You know, whether you believe in them or not, at least they're available for you. It's kind of like voting. You know, sometimes you go in there and vote, but at least if you vote and it doesn't go your way, you at least have a reason to complain.
Yeah.
Like, you voted at least.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't go in and speak your piece, you don't even have a reason to complain. Yeah. Like, you can complain all you want, but you didn't do anything to stop it.
You know, the one positive, you know, we've talked about a lot of negative things for non-residents right here. The one positive that I can see happening between the cap being lifted and the regionalization of the general elk, there's going to be some places that non-residents can probably draw with 1, maybe even 0 points again, you know, here in the future. And that'll be nice. Guys that want to go and hunt, you know, some of those areas may be the wilderness where you're going to have to go guided. You know, we're not even going to talk about that right now. And that rule, and I'll bring that up, and they won't even talk to you about it at these meetings and that. But, you know, those there is a positive note there. They're going to spread that around, and hopefully, you know, you'll be able to draw with less points, because even the general elk tag right now, the point creep on it's getting out of control.
Well, is it 4 in the regular?
It's probably going to be 5 in the regular this year, and you know, probably it's going to take 4 from the numbers we've run. It's probably going to take 4, and then, you know, these podcasts like this and some others that have come out, boy, telling everybody that all the good news going on. People, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been getting a lot of calls. Guys are like, man, I think I need to burn my points.
So
there's those guys with 7, 8, 9 points that are going to burn them on a general, and that doesn't help the point creep there.
It doesn't, and what's tough is it's similar to, let's say, like Colorado. You know, that was the big thing a couple years ago when they reset those season dates back for rifle seasons to late during the rut. You know, and they were going to issue a lot of tags. We saw a big influx of applications and point creep in a lot of those units, and actually came back down, which is like the first time in ever I've actually seen units get easier to draw from one year to the next. Yeah. But this last year, there was quite a few units or quite a few areas that got a little easier to draw than they were the year before. So depending on how much like hype and how much people pay attention to what's going on in Wyoming, and, you know, how big of a cut they think they're going to have, I think you're going to see the same thing. You're going to see an definite influx of applications that are switching from points only to actually drawing. Yep. Some of these units that have been riding the pine, just kind of sitting there at like 13, 14, 15 points, they might shoot up to 16.
Yeah, they may go max. I think there's a few of these that are going to jump max from just guys I've talked to, and then, you know, it'll come back down. And the difference between this and your Colorado is the hunting is going to stay the same. You know, the elk hunting will stay the same. Where in Colorado, the deer hunting is probably quality wise has declined a little bit. Colorado did what they wanted to do. They wanted to kill a lot of mature bucks by setting it in the rut. The elk hunting in Wyoming it's as good as it's ever been, especially numbers wise. And so I mean, don't panic on it. And, you know, if you want to go hunt it and you got the points to do it, if not, you want to build another point or two, don't worry about it. I don't think we're going to see a huge change in non-resident tag numbers. If anything, they may go up actually for non-residents. So that is one positive note.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing to point out is, it's not all negative.
Yeah.
There's some good things that are happening. Like you say, it's at a high for elk. So my biggest thing that I tell guys is, it doesn't, like, to me, the price increase is probably the one that should scare guys as far as if they don't want to spend that much money on a special, because what's going to happen is the regular is going to get definitely harder to draw in some of these units. So you're going to see a big increase in that, at least the demand for regular tags. But just if there's a hunt out there that will satisfy what you've been building points and banking points all these years for, do it.
Yep.
Go. Like you said, there's not a better time.
No. Elk numbers are great. The elk hunting it's just so good right now. Get out there if you got the points and the time to do it. If not, build you a few points and you can here in the near future.
Well, so I would say the biggest takeaways on this is look at that season date, or not season dates, the application deadline that's going to come down. See how many tags are going to issue and what units are actually going to issue non-resident tags in for sheep, moose, and goat. Make sure of what you're applying for. Just keep in the loop on things that are going on in Wyoming. Like, stay informed. Take the surveys, and if you're going to invest time and money into the state, I mean, you owe it to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's this hunting, especially out of state. It's just a big investment anymore. It's a big investment money-wise, time-wise. It's just not – I mean, I remember when my dad was guiding years ago, I mean, we had the same guys show up every year. They could draw that tag. They knew they were coming. From when they left that year to the next year, they knew they could draw the deer elk tag. It didn't matter. They were coming if they had the time and the money to do it. So, and on those deadlines, it's April 17th for bighorn sheep, moose, bison, and mountain goat. But the elk is still the end of January 31st. Yep. But you can modify up to the 8th of May with that. But there's no modification for the others this year because they set it back. So.
Got it. So you're modifying that elk by May 8th. And, that's a lot of times, like last year, there was some of those hunt dates that got changed around.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
They stuck a couple in on us.
Yeah, they snuck a couple hunts in there. And so if you are applying for elk, just stay aware and just keep track of that commission meeting once they pass down. And, of course, we'll send out alerts through our Huntin' Full. So, if you have the app and you're subscribed to those alerts, you'll get an alert that says, hey, hit this link and, check out what new hunts or what lack of hunts or season dates have been changed over in Wyoming.
Yeah, yep, you bet. Because there could be some changes. They were always talking about adding archery hunts, maybe a late hunt here and there. So yeah, keep up to date on that. And if you need to, I mean, my advice, if you don't know what you want to do right now, just put in for something. And you can always withdraw it before the May 8th, or you can switch it to something else. That is one good feature that Wyoming has in there for that.
No, that's a good point. That's good advice.
So, other than that, we'll just try to keep everybody up to date on all this stuff and see what else new comes down the line.
Well, that sounds good to me.
Okay.